Welcome to the Folktale Project. This is Dan Scholz. Today we have a story of, a famous general. And it's a well-known tale in Germany. This is not the love story, but the story of Jan and Griet. There lived at Cologne on the old farm of Kumschenshof a peasant who had a maid called Griet and a manservant called Jan. Thus begins the old, well-known Rhenish song of Jan van Werth, the celebrated general of the imperial cavalry at the same time when the Swedes and French were taking advantage of the civil war in Germany. But nobody except the inhabitants of the holy city of Cologne knows that Jan van Werth was originally a simple laborer, and that he was indebted for his luck in life to his bad luck in love. Jan was an industrious farmer boy with an upright character and a handsome face. Many a girl would not have rejected him as a sweetheart, but Jan's tender heart had long been captivated by the good looks of pretty Griet, the comely maid of the Kumschenshof. His love could not long remain a secret. One day he confessed to her with sobs that he loved her dearly, and would with pleasure work and toil for her twice as much as he did then for his master. He spoke long and earnestly, taking courage with every word he uttered. He at last put to her the all-important question: would she become his wife? Laughingly, the pretty girl put her arms around akimbo, tossed her head back, and looked at her honest suitor with a mocking twinkle in her eyes. Then she shook her head energetically and said, "You are only a farmer's laborer, my dear boy, and will remain one probably all your life. True, it is not your fault, but all the same I should prefer to marry a rich farmer with cows and oxen and horses." Bitter anger rose in Jan's breast on hearing her talk so heartlessly, but he controlled himself. "Just as you like," he said sadly, and turned away from the haughty maid. From that time he could not endure any longer the life at the farm, and, pocketing his wages, he said goodbye forever to the Kumschenshof and became a soldier. It was a furious war in which the German emperor was engaged against the enemies of his country, and brave soldiers were rare. Any valiant warrior might distinguish himself and become an officer at that time. The farmer boy, Jan, soon won by his bravery and intrepidity the esteem of his superiors and was promoted to the rank of colonel. Once, when fighting against the Swedish troops, he showed such determination and courage that he won the battle. At this brilliant act he was made a general. But the name of Jan van Werth became even more famous when he beat the French in a skirmish at Tuttlingen. In another way, also, his good luck reconciled him to the first bitter disappointment caused for by Griet's scornful answer. He married a lovely and noble young lady, who was very proud of becoming the wife of such a celebrated general. Let us look now back and see what happened in the meantime to Griet. She had waited month after month and year after year for her rich farmer, but the longed-for suitor never made his appearance. Even in those bygone days, red cheeks and bright eyes were much less thought of than ducats and glittering gold. As time went on, Griet grew old, and though she would now have been content with a simple man for her sweetheart, not even such a one condescended to ask her to become his wife. Little by little, Griet gave up all hopes of ever marrying, and had to look out for a living to keep her in her old age from starving. Therefore, she started a fruit stall at one of the large gateways of Cologne. One day, the good inhabitants of this town were in great excitement and crowded in their Sunday best clothes round the gate of St. Severin, where Griet sat at her apple stall. They had come to meet Jan van Werth, the celebrated general, who was returning victorious at the head of his regiment. There he was, sitting on a powerful charger which was gorgeously covered with gilded trappings. On his fine head, Jan wore a broad-brimmed hat with a flowing feather. Behind him rode his splendid soldiers. The bodyguard of the town beat the drum enthusiastically, and the Cologne people called out, "Long live our Jan van Werth!" When the celebrated general passed the gate, he stopped his horse just in front of Griet's apple baskets, and looking down upon the old wrinkled woman, met her questioning glance with an odd smile. "Ah, Griet," he said slowly, "whoever would have thought it?" At the sound of his voice, an expression of sudden recognition passed over her worn features, and she muttered sorrowfully, but still audibly to the proud rider, "Oh, Jan, if I had only known it." A magnificent monument in the form of the statue of Jan van Werth now stands in the center of the old market of Cologne. It was erected there in memory not only of the historic deeds of the brave general, but also as a warning to all Cologne maidens not to reject their suitors because they are poor, for one day, like Jan van Werth, they may become famous, and then they will not, like Griet, have to sigh over things that might have been. And that is the tale of Jan and Griet, a story of not love, but of a young man taking the spurning of his lady love and turning it into a successful life for himself. It's still a little sad, isn't it? This is Dan Scholz for the Folktale Project. Don't forget that you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, Overcast, anywhere you like to get your podcasts. You can follow us on Twitter at Folktale Project. You can find us on Auto Radio, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, anywhere you'd like to listen. And you can always head over to folktaleproject.com, where you'll find a new story waiting for you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. As always, thank you so much for listening.